everyone. For reading today, we're going to be looking at an informational text called Up in the Air. And as you know, our essential question that we're thinking about while we read during this unit is what makes things move? So I think when we read today, when I look at these pictures on the page, I think we're going to be learning about how these move, which are hot air balloons. But today, your purpose for reading and listening is that I want you to be able to say afterwards, I can retell the key details after I read. So the key details is another word for important details. So what are the important things that we learn when we read this informational text? And first things first, when we look at the text, I want you to see if you can spot some things that tell you that this text is informational. Remember, that means that we learn from reading. This isn't a story, a fictional story. This is information that we learn. So looking at the text, what are some things that you notice on the pages here that this is not a story, but this is text that's going to teach us things, information. Maybe you noticed that this is a real picture. It's not a drawing, but instead it's a real picture to learn about something that is real. Maybe you also noticed this map over here. Must be teaching us something about maybe where these hot air balloons are. Looks like New Mexico is the state where we see them. Maybe you also noticed this blue writing down here at the bottom. Do you remember what we call this blue writing that explains what's in a picture? The caption, that's right. So this caption is telling us a little bit more about this picture. Let's read what it says. It says, every year, hundreds of people climb aboard hot air balloons at the Balloon Fiesta in New Mexico. So I just learned something right there. And this map is explaining where New Mexico is. That's this state right here. We live in California, right on the side. So just a few states over, New Mexico has this big fiesta or party for hot air balloons. And then one more thing you may have noticed is this box right over here. This is called a diagram. So a diagram teaches us more about something, and it has labels that tell us more about this. So I'm going to bring you in a little closer to take a closer look at this diagram. So it looks like we have another caption here. This caption is explaining the diagram. And I see lots of words here that explain all the different parts of a hot air balloon. So it says, the pilot controls the fire to make the air inside the balloon hotter or cooler. That causes the balloon to rise or fall. Interesting. So those are just a few things that I noticed right away. Let me know that this text is informational. We're going to be learning while we read today. And so remember, while I read today, your job for listening is to be able to retell the key details after I read. All right? So I will ask you at the end, what are some important things you learn about how hot air balloons move? So just throw on a listening cap. I'm going to zoom you in a little closer just so you can see the words. Oops. And we will read up in the air. Up in the air. Imagine drifting high above the ground. There's nothing but sky around you. You're standing in a small basket, this one, under a giant balloon and a roaring fire. So a very loud fire. The balloon is as colorful as a box of crayons. You can see that in these pictures, right? Look at all the beautiful colors. How did you get up so high? More important, how will you get down? Going up and going down is easy. If hot air is light and makes the balloon rise. Oh. So I just learned something right there. So maybe this is one of the important details to remember. Let me read that one more time. If hot air is light and makes the balloon rise. So rise means it goes up. So what kind of air do they need to make it rise? Hot air. So that hotter air makes the balloon go up. Then cool air, which is heavier, makes it sink. So that colder air is it's not as warm, it's heavier. So that air makes things go down, makes the balloon go down. There's no way to steer the balloon from side to side, so don't try to get anywhere. Just drift with the wind and enjoy the ride. Interesting. So after hearing that text, what do you think were some of the important details that the author wanted you to learn about how a hot air balloon moves? Sounds like it has a lot to do with the temperature, right? There's air inside this balloon. And let's see, actually, if I look closely here at this diagram, I see that one of the words here says burners. Burner sounds like it makes fire. So there's fire right here underneath. It won't catch the balloon on fire, but it creates air that's either very warm, or if they want the air to be cool, they'll turn the burners off and that makes the air cool. And an important detail that I learned is if the hot air is light, it makes the balloon rise. So if they want the balloon to go higher into the sky, they turn on these burners to make sure the air inside gets really, really hot. That hot air is light. It's not that heavy. So the lighter things up, up. And then if they want to go down, it says the cool air, that air that isn't as warm, it's cooler, makes the air heavier. So that heavier air, what happens to things that are heavy? They sink, right? Just like when we put that, remember when we did the pumpkin in the water? It was lighter than it looked, so it floated up at the top. But heavier things, they sink down. So if that air inside is nice and cool, it makes the balloon go lower. It's very interesting. So I don't know about you, but I learned a lot about how hot air balloons move. Did you learn some things too? Remember, whenever you're reading informational text, you can tell that text is informational by looking for clues in the text, like real pictures, maybe a map or a diagram. And also the captions help you know that this is text that you're learning from, informational text. And also remember, when you're reading informational text, your goal for listening should be to be able to retell the key details. What were the important things that you learned? Good job, everybody. I'll talk to you later. Bye.